Bueno, volvió Mate con Man, así que estamos muy contentos. Este episodio es con George Vaz, entrenador de Transforming Basketball. Están cambiando la manera de enseñar el básquet. Ya llegó a la NBA, los mejores entrenadores de la NBA están trabajando con esto. Si te interesan los Ecological Dynamics, el CLA, es por acá. Te va a volar la cabeza y va a cambiar tu manera de ver los entrenamientos para siempre. Nos vemos ahí.
I'm George. Been coaching professionally for 3 years. Been coaching for like the last 12 years. After, I used to work in IT, similar to you, Pablo, in that kind of, business industry. But then transitioned over full time, and now I work with Transforming Basketball for the last year, pretty much. And like it's really cool just to see the growth that we can see from obviously from people like you, but also from people that are like, oh, messaging us and letting us know like that they're trying out the things and they love it and that their players love it. And it's awesome to see that kind of basketball, but sports generally is growing with transforming basketball and the CLA movement.
Yeah. So I did this, but uh, I'll just take you around questions and we'll cut whatever. Tito, do you want to say hi?
Hi, first of all, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you here talking with us. I'm not going to talk too much because my English is not so good, so I'm going to just listen and listen. That's all.
Yeah.
He read all the books of transforming basketball, so he's
I'm a
like
big fan. I'm a big fan of transforming basketball,
Right.
so it's really an honor for me to listening to you.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's like I'm a big fan as well. Like even though I work in it, like I'm like I really like the stuff that we put out. I just think more importantly, like practical ways to, that the examples that we give to help coaches do what we do in their own practice environments. Because I think it's so cool to see, like, as I was saying before, your activities in a different context. So it's just like, okay, now we're just teaching people how to use it. And then, hopefully our whole plan is to grow to transforming football and transforming soccer and baseball and all that. So hopefully we'll keep growing.
so thank you, mate, for your time. We're having Mate from Argentina.
Love it.
So what is transforming basketball for our followers? What should they know?
So transforming basketball is all about changing the old way that basketball, and I guess sports, but we'll focus on basketball, changing the old way that basketball is taught. So traditionally, coaches put players in lines, they give orders and expect players to follow those orders to a T. Like this is exactly how you do a layup. And we're and this all comes from like the industrial age when sports started to become popular. And it's like it's great if you're building cars and you don't want to make mistakes, but it's not necessarily great for learning new skills. um, and so all we're doing is like trying to change this. Instead of it being a traditional way to teach, it's more modern way to teach, where it's like we're going to put players in these small-sided games, and players are going to play and explore their environment, and they're going to self-organize based on the problems they're facing in their environment to find the correct solution or a functional solution to the problems at hand. So this could be as simple as, players are it's a 2-on-1 passing game, and instead of telling players to pass around the defense, since the defender is coming in closer to them, they're going to naturally find a way to self-organize without us telling them exactly how to do. So, they could pivot, they could step, they could cross step, throw it over, bounce pass, but they're going to naturally find ways to do that without me having to, tell them explicitly, this is the one way how to do it. And I think that's what transforming basketball is about in a nutshell.
We are
Excellent.
very aligned with that. We love it, and we're big fans. And we're trying that stuff all around our academy. So that's awesome. So for some people, maybe they have never heard about CLA. What would can you tell us around that, or the ecological dynamics, or whatever?
No, yeah, the CLA stands for constraints-led approach, and all it is, it's like, I think one of the seminal papers, 1976, maybe if I got it right, or 86 or 84. But it's Carl Newell, and he wrote about the constraints that approach. And basically the example he gave is like how babies learn to walk. And, when a baby's learning to walk, we don't give them instructions like, all right, this is how you have to do it. You have to stand up. You have to, brace your core. You have to balance. We don't do that because babies don't understand us at that age. So all we do is, we as they're learning to walk, they start to crawl, and then maybe we'll pick them up and they start to balance while we're holding them. Then they become stronger. And then we kind of, stop holding them and they balance and they fall over, and then we pick them back up. Then they eventually learn how to get up by themselves. Then they eventually start walking until they fall over. Then it's like, all right, so we'll clear the space for them because they're tripping on things. So we clear the space. So we kind of, simplify their problems, and then they can walk without having to worry about tripping over. So it's like athletes, we do the same thing, but in context. So for example, in basketball, the constraints that approach is like, instead of putting a 5-on-5 game and teaching kids or players how to do a pick and roll or how to create an advantage from a pick and roll, we're going to constrain the activity. So we're going to simplify it. We might tell them to focus on different points of the game. And the way we do this is by constraints. So we add constraints to the activities, and this could be, we take away certain players in the game. So instead of it being 5-on-5, we make it 2-on-2 or 1-on-1+1 or whatever the case is, simplified enough where they get challenge, so they can still learn, but it's not too easy for them. So that's all the constraints is. It's just a guiding, something that guides their attention and guides their actions enough for them to kind of push them towards the solution that we're kind of want to push them towards. And also about constraining, it's not necessarily about them finding the correct solution. It's more about them taking away the wrong solutions. So I think that's where like the beauty of constraining comes in. It's like they could have, and there's this cool thing in the book, Ignacio, I'm sure you've read it, and it's like, Steph Curry, Giannis, and Nikola Jokic all have the ball at the top of the key. They perceive different ways to act on that problem. So it's like, I'm not telling each one of them like, this is how I want you to do it, or these are like the 5 ways I want you to do it. But instead, all right, so maybe these are some ways that are wrong. So we're gonna constrain you so you don't go here and you don't look for these options. But then everything else, like, you have to figure out how to do. And I think that's what the constraints are.
That's a beautiful art.
Yeah, it's hard.
That's a lot of art.
It's challenging to do in real time, like constraining in real time, because it's like you could come in, and the way I structure my practice plans is like I have the activity, and then I have, the rules, and then I have the potential constraints because I imagine what the players are going to need help with. So I kind of like anticipate it. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to do a 3-on-3 game where they have to create an advantage from the pick and roll on the side, a side pick and roll, and the defense is switching. And then, and then the first constraint can be, all right, I'm going to limit their dribbles after they get out the pick and roll. So maybe I can see more relay passing as a coverage solution. But then it doesn't work like that. Then it's kind of like other things happen, and you have to be ready as a coach. Like, so maybe they're, the defense is allowing the reject every time. So we're not even getting to the relay pass because they're allowing the reject. So then I can come in and say, all right, so maybe like, offense gets double points for a reject, or defense is off if they allow the reject, just because we don't want the reject to happen, because if it happens, we can't work on the intention of the game. So it's like, as you said, it's a beautiful art, but doing it in real time is challenging. You do need practice, and you are going to fail. So I do think you have to have an open mindset about that.
Yeah, and as a coach, you are adapting all the time. You're doing exactly what you're asking for the players to do, eh?
Yeah, it's so true. Agreed.
So this pathway, this way has been challenging around transforming basketball, because of course we got plenty of coaches they like the old ways, and sometimes, at least for us as rugby coaches, sometimes we try to share this, and they even never trained that way, the coaches. So they say, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's challenging, isn't it? I know I never trained that way. So it's like, I remember when I first learned about it, and I was put in the environment, and it was with Alex, and he, he constrained as coaches. So basically we had a large number of practice, but we had lots of baskets and we had a lot of coaches. And he was like, all right, guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to split up the groups and it's going to be in stations. And at your station, you're not allowed to do the same game twice. And we're going to switch every 2 minutes, and every 2 minutes you have to do a different game. And then so we did the first round was I was doing shooting, another coach was doing ball handling, another coach was doing passing. And then after the first round, which was 5 kind of rounds, and then we switch, then it was I'm doing passing, and then it's still the same thing. We can't do the same game. So immediately I'm oh, this is crazy. I can't do this. But then because the constraint is there, you only have 2 minutes. So you can't take a long time explaining it. It can't be a complicated game. It has to be a super simple game so the players pick it up. But then that exercise alone helped me realize that, you don't have to really complicate things. It's just more about making sure the kids play, making sure that there's a decision when they're playing, and then, making it easier or harder so that they can get the most out of the exercise.
It's always getting the feeling of the sweet spot, eh?
Yeah, and that is I think that's where anyone can constrain, but finding a way to get the optimal challenge point for your players so that their learning can be at that optimal point, so you can maximize the season, maximize their development. That's the real challenge, because sometimes you're going to have a team where you can have 2 or 3 really good players. The most of them are in the middle, and then a few not so good players. So then it's about how can I organize practice, structure it so everyone can be at that optimal challenge point. And that's where individual constraints come in, so you can constrain a player. Something I've always liked to do is before practice, I'll on a whiteboard, I'll write, all right, these are your double points today, or these are something you can't do and it's a turnover. And then I'll write that for each player. And then so for example, if I have a couple guards that are really good at driving to the basket, but every time they drive, they either get stuck or force a bad shot, or maybe they get a good shot. But sometimes when the defense closes in, they'll force a bad shot. I want them to Nash dribble. So it's about any bucket they score with a Nash dribble is an automatic win. And it's really just encouraging them to explore those solutions, because the reward is so big. So it's I'm really just amplifying the affordance for them to Nash dribble, for example. And I think that's as coaches, that's essentially what we're doing. We're just making an affordance bigger or smaller. And then, for the listeners that don't know, affordance is just an opportunity for action, like the Nash dribble I explained.
Yeah.
We have
and it's even encouraging to fail, eh? Because you're going to try something new.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And you should, and it's not about I don't even say failing. I like to just say, or if I do, it's failing upwards, but it's I always call it learning, it's
Learning, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's you don't fail, you learn. And that's the kind of mindset I like to have with the players. You should try new things. And as coaches, coaches should try new things as well and learn from it as well.
Tito.
Yes, I heard you saying that you love trying new things. What's the most weird thing or that you have done in a training session?
You know what? It's
as a coach.
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't it wasn't intentional. I didn't go into practice thinking that I was going to do this, but we had one session last season in Portugal, and we walked into practice, and the Portuguese national futsal team was using our gym. So, they're a professional team, so that means that they put the flooring on the floor. So there was no basketball lines. The whole gym is basically a futsal court. And I was like, all right, we can't do our pick and roll spacings from this. It won't make sense to the players. We can't do, 3-point shooting competitions because we don't know where the line is. So it was like, all right, what are we gonna do? So the warm up was like, all right, guys, we're gonna play futsal. All right, we're gonna play futsal. And so we played futsal, and then everyone was dribbling with a basketball while playing futsal. Right. So that was one of the constraints. And then it was just about all right, how can we play? And then we actually played basketball, but with the futsal court. So it was it was like a mixture of hockey where they could go behind the basket. And it was really cool because they really, it was like the Nash dribble became a lot more, second time I mentioned the Nash dribble. But then that was interestingly enough, that was a way that it really helped them learn about the Nash dribble, because then they really went under the basket because there was so much more space to go under the basket. And they manipulated the defense like that, because then the defense would be looking at them as they're dribbling around the basket. So we played with the futsal 5-on-5. I think it was 6-on-6 actually, with the futsal court, and just kind of made new rules up on the spot. Still basketball, same basketball rules. Everything was worth one. But every time that they went around the basket, or under the basket with the Nash dribble, they could get a double point from it. So it's like little things like that that we used. It was, yeah, I thought it was super
Awesome.
interesting. The practice in itself was really cool. I really enjoyed that one.
Thank you.
Creativity every day.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I never like to do the same thing twice. Sometimes you do have some games, some small-sided games that are your favorites. Like I love pass keep away. Like I'm a really big fan, and all that is like, say you're inside the 3-point line, and it's a 3-on-3 game, and all it is, players are trying to make 10 passes in a row, defense is defending. If defense tip the ball or steal the ball, then they become offense, and it's just a continuous game trying to get 10 passes in a row, and you can constrain that loads of different ways, like bounce passes only, alley-oop passes, maybe it's like a pass off a get is double points. But it's like I would do that for warm up every day. Like I would love to, right? But then it's just not fair for the players, because it's also about them having fun. It's not necessarily, I think it's a great game to learning passing, but at the same time, I also want them to, have some variety in the practice session. So I try not to use the same game too many times. But that one and dribble knockout for warm up is probably two of my, overused games, I'd say.
But inside the game, you can do different constraints, so that gives you...
Exactly. So it never is the same game because it's different rules. So that's a good point. But it's, it looks like the same game, and, it feels like it. But to your point, yeah, you always try to, change it up a little bit. Maybe it's 2-on-2, maybe it's 3-on-3, maybe it's 3-on-4, and there's an extra defender. So like, there are some ways to just continue to increase the complexity. And another reason why I don't like to have the same games is because as a coach, I'm forced to come up with new ideas if I'm constantly challenging myself to create new games. And that like really helps me come up with some really wild games. And I think transforming basketball, one of the coolest things about it is the fact that we have so many unique games that we have come up with, right? Whether that was Alex when he was at college prep, or even when we were at London Lions together, up till, what I did last year, what other coaches did. You see so many activities that are just brand new, and you're like, whoa. And I was watching the clinic, and it was like, and you guys could probably do this at your rugby games, and it's like a human jungle gym. And it's basically two players, one starts on the back of one, and the whole thing is they have to get to the back of the other without touching the floor. And it's like that, and that's the warm-up activity. And I was like, that's crazy. That looks really fun. So that's something that, you think, and you're like, that's crazy. It's not gonna work. It looks stupid. But then you try and you're like, you know what? That was pretty cool. The players had a lot of fun.
Wow. We're really enjoying this matter with you. Thank you so much.
Nice, love it. Yeah, I wish I had one.
One day you'll come here. Yeah. Anytime you come here to Argentina, you can have mate with us, and we will also bring you to our academy. So you see what we do. Like we do similar stuff, but we're big fans of you guys. Where does the CLA has been developing around teams or during the world, and in which stage do you think it is?
I think it's gaining a lot of popularity, because when the top leagues and the top teams in the world do something, everyone's going to look at the success that they've had and ask, how are they having this success? And then, okay, they're using the CLA. And then I think that follows. So, and it's not necessarily the right approach. because, you know, there's a lot of really successful teams do things that aren't maybe the best way to go about, you know, skill development. But that's just the way it is. You know, the really successful teams, other teams look at them and ask, all right, how are they so successful? It's like Spain in basketball and pretty much any sport. You know, everyone looks at Spain and they're like, you know, how in the world are they developing such all this amazing talent? And then they copy it. You know, some of what they're doing is amazing, but a lot of it is still, you know, traditional. So I think the CLA is, you know, in a good place. It's in a great place. It's growing. And I think it's just going to keep growing because the main thing is that it brings results. And at the end of the day, as coaches, we all want to be efficient in what we do. So we want to be able to, you know, start a season and get through as much of our principles of play as possible by the end of the season. And I think the CLA allows us to do that because it allows us to be very specific with the skills we want to develop in practice and for the team. So I think, you know, it's in a great place and it's only going to continue to grow. So whoever like starts now, it's like AI, you know, AI was like the large language models was like 2012 when it was invented, I believe, for a competition. And so it's been around for 13 years and I just heard about it, you know, 1-2 years ago. But it's like, it's the same as the CLA. It's been around for decades, but now more and more people are catching on. So it's only going to get bigger and bigger exponentially.
That
You
would be
talk
great
about
because it's also more fun.
Exactly. You know, I think, you know, I think for youth players, for youth sports especially, but I think even for you know, the professionals and adults, it's just more fun. Like no one wants to go into practice, stand in line, do things robotically. It's monotonous. Seasons are so long. You know, you don't want to kind of like bore your players, and boredom is like what you want to avoid, I think, when it comes to teaching, because if your students are bored, they're not really going to be paying attention. They're not going to learn. So the CLA is fun. It's you know, everyone's engaged and it allows them to have a sense of ownership as well. So you can co-design activities with players. You know, I've come into practice and have something planned out, but notice that they look tired. You know, maybe it's they're taking tests at school. You know, they've had a long week, whatever the case is, didn't sleep well. It's like, all right, guys, you know, I had a practice, but we're not going to do it. We're going to have more of a light day today. What would you like to work on? And then it's like, you know, asking them what they want to work on and they feel involved in their learning process. And I think, you know, I do camps, and every time I do a camp, I always kind of sometimes I'll do a traditional camp, and I don't want to mention any names of the camps I've been to that are more traditional, but I always try to add a decision to whatever activity we're doing that you know, maybe the clinician has passed, and it's like, all right, guys, we're gonna do that, but we're just gonna have a defender right here, right? And it's like we're gonna spot shoot, but the passer, as soon as he passes, is gonna come close out, right? So you got to get that shot up quickly. So just like it's super small, whereas the guys that pass the small sided game or the activity, they don't notice anything different. But just to kind of give a decision to the players, and then you just see like the players are having fun, they're competing, and they're still learning at the same time, and you know, learning even more. I would argue.
Tito, you're gonna ask something?
No. Well, you talk about principles of play, and in the book, Alex said something that how to play, not what to play. I like that from him.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit of that or explain that?
Yes.
I
So
took you to talking about the principles of play, and I really like what you said. So I would like to hear you here to our
yeah.
members of the academy.
Yeah, it's like, you know, and I'm curious as well. I want to ask you guys after what principles of play in rugby are, what kind of some popular ones, but in basketball, you know, you kind of have your universal basketball principles of play, and then you have, you know, maybe your team specific principles of play. So like, you know, your universal principles of play could be, excuse me, how you play with an advantage. So after you create, we call it dominoes. After you create dominoes, what are your rules for playing with dominoes, right? And, you know, we use floor is lava, which is basically into and out to space. So you can have more spacing when you have an advantage. You got to stretch the defense. So make sure one defender can't guard two, and then 0-second decision. So you have to make a shoot, drive, or pass decision in less than 1 second, right? And so how you design practices in your practice environment will, everything you do is you're gonna look at your principles of play, and you're gonna be like, okay, we're gonna be playing one-on-one today in practice, but how can I put them in an environment where they're going to be at a slight advantage so that they can play with these 0-second decisions, for example? So it could be like a one-on-one closeout game, right? And the defense has to close out one arm's distance. So it's like it's a hot closeout. So the offense can maybe drive or they can shoot, but they have a lot of affordances to make some of these decisions. And then maybe we can add a shot clock, right? You get 3 seconds to score. And then what we're doing here is we're educating their attention to what we want them to do in the game, or in the small-sided game, which is play with 0-second decisions and, you know, get the high value shots, which, you know, we use the shot spectrum, gold, silver, bronze, medal. So you can either score a layup or you can shoot a catch and shoot three. So it makes their decision making really easy. But how they do and how they score the gold medal, how they score the silver medal, and how they play with 0-second decisions, whether they catch and rip, whether they catch and stampede, whether they catch, pump, fake, and go, like, that's all up to them. So we're not prescribing any of these solutions for them. And then you also have the principles of play that are specific to your team. So it's like, how does your team want to play in transition? So a lot of coaches want to play fast in transition. So, all right, cool, we want to play fast. So here's our, you know, we call it these micro principles. So we want to play fast. So what are some of these micro habits that we could do on the court that could help us play fast? So we could, like, instead of landing like or catching the rebound and, you know, pivoting and passing to the outlet, which you still see being taught, it's like you catch already facing the other basket. And if no one's in front of you, you're going to start transition with a dribble. And if there is somebody in front of you, you're going to pass to the open player and, you know, pass ahead to the open player. And then we're still going to be running. So it's like finding these small micro principles that are going to align with your whole holistic approach to how you want to play. And then, you know, that goes to defense, half court offense, transition defense, all of it. I'm curious, like, is there any, for you guys that coach rugby, because I'm not too familiar with the sport, I would watch it every now and then, but it's like, what are some principles that you want, like, when you have an advantage, and then what are some things that you can do to create an advantage in your sport?
Yeah, like we love the fact, like we always say, it's like, I don't know how you say in English, like the manda, like where you cover when you sleep, you cover with what yourself?
Blanket.
Your blanket. So we say the blanket must be short. So in defense, you can only cover like if you cover the whole width, probably there's gonna be space on behind. Like if the attack covers the width, there's gonna be space probably on the middle, or if not on the back. But you can never cover everything properly. So we're always big on scanning. Where is the blanket failing?
Right.
You know, we're big on scanning. We love players that scan.
Yep.
Like that kind of stuff. But for example, yeah, on transition, sometimes from chaos, maybe if you do you get width quickly and you do two passes, you're gonna be quickly without defenders. But maybe also if you get the ball quickly, if you kick it back, there's gonna be no one at the end of the field. So there's more than one way. It also depends on the way you want to play, and also the moment of the team. Like hopefully we develop players that can do more than one system.
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
sometimes you want possession, sometimes you don't. Sometimes in the same game you need to have possession, and sometimes it depends, eh?
Do you ever add a shot clock to your activities?
That's a big one for us. You always say, like, and we take it from Rusty Earnshaw, who is a rugby coach, but he does everything. He's one of our mentors. He says, like, you can't coach decision making without time and score. So if we don't have a clock, we're always saying 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2-0 or whatever. So that's big because it's not the same to do a 3v2 with the score at some way or the score on another way.
Yeah.
What do you reckon? Challenge us, eh? We're open to.
No, I love it. I
Yeah.
agree. I think, and that's very interesting. What the mentor said, Rusty May, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree completely. I think and it's great because basketball already has a shot clock, right? So I think naturally that's more of an easier selling point for basketball coaches. But in other sports, they don't have a shot clock. So maybe it's like, oh, I don't know, like it's not gonna be in the game, so why would we do it now? But I think the shot clock is probably like the most powerful constraint manipulation that you have, the time, right? Constraining time. Yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of mental skills, it's also big because
Yeah.
you need players to embrace all those moments and ask for the ball and that, and you can, yeah. So we also, on that, we always price first 30 seconds and last minutes. So
Yeah.
if you score on those moments, it's double points because we want them to. It's not the same if you hit first and if you hit last.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But we wanted to listen to you.
No, great. No, that's a great point though. Yeah, it's the same in basketball. We call it a clapback. It's a transition offense principle. It's like if you can score within 5 seconds of getting scored on, we call that a clapback. So in practice, to your point, it's like double points if you can clap back, or sometimes it'll just be an automatic win if you clap back in whatever small-sided game we're doing.
Well, Tito, do you have any question? I've got plenty, but
yes, I got plenty, but I want to look for the best questions.
Because we read and Tito really investigated yourself and said that you are a really great asking questions. So maybe we wanted to ask you, we prepared ourselves and said, if George is great asking questions, we wanted to ask you, to the best coach you ever had, what would you ask him?
That's a great question. I've been really fortunate just to have a lot of like different perspectives in a lot of my coaching situations. Of course, like been super fortunate as well to work with Alex because I think he's a great coach, and he's gonna and I'm really looking forward to, his new journey now with the Portland Fire as the head coach. I think some people are naturally head coaches, some people are, more naturally assistants. And that's not to say an assistant can't be a head and vice versa, but I just think Alex, to me, has always been like naturally, really good at giving direction as a head coach in practice, in games, just the way I've always seen him. So I don't know if I could ask, maybe it'd be like, what would be the one piece of advice you would give yourself right at the beginning of your career? And I think that maybe that'd be my question for, maybe Alex as well, and maybe, some of the other coaches that I've had the pleasure of working with.
And what would you tell yourself?
If one piece of advice, I think put the team first. The team is the most important. So it's always like you have to defend the integrity of the team at all costs. And I think that would be what I would tell myself. So like regardless of, you trying to please players, regardless of the consequences, it's like the team is the most important. And that's what I would tell myself. So you have to find a way to always protect, the team, whether that's, maybe some pressure coming from up top, and maybe the head of where you're working doesn't want you to play a certain way, but the team and the team is made up of the players, so essentially we're trying to protect all of the players, but then together. So that would be that's what I would tell myself personally, but I'd be curious to see what they would tell me.
Okay. Yeah.
I have another question. Perdón, Pablo, si querés, vos.
Okay.
What is being a coach for you, and why are you a coach?
Being a coach for me is teaching, and it's teaching I don't, truthfully, I mean, it sounds bad, but it's like the actual sport isn't that important. It is important because it's the vehicle we use to teach life lessons. And a lot of the times, you know, you're only going to be able to teach the players that you're coaching, you know. So of course the sport is important because that's the only way I'm going to be able to affect change in these, you know, in my coaching experience, it's always most of the time been young men and young women. Um, so I think that to me being a coach is about teaching, and one of the things that really draws me to being a coach is like you can't really be hypocritical, and it really helps me in my day to day and my habits because I can't tell a kid that they should, you know, take risks and you know fail because it's gonna make them better if I'm not doing the same thing. You know, like you know, why is Steph Curry the best shooter? Because he's probably missed more shots than anybody else ever, right? So it's like, and that's how I see it for myself. It's like, you know, if I want to be the best, you know, person and the best coach and the best son and the best cousin and the best friend I can be, then I can't really be afraid to fail, but I have to do everything in the best interest of, you know, these roles that I'm playing.
Thank you,
That's
mate.
awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah. Because at the end, I don't know in English how to say it, but we don't teach what we know. We teach who we are at some point.
And I think like it's super important. I know one of the you know what's it called, like when you're scared to, you know, be yourself in the situation. Like when I first started coaching professionally, I was scared to be myself, like show my personality. And you know, I that definitely affected the way I coached. So it's like to your point, it's we're teaching who we are. So if you can't be yourself, then you know, you're teaching something that you're not, essentially. So I do think you have to find a balance of, you know, teaching and making sure that the effort and the standard of your teams and your team's values are being withheld, and like how you're doing that as well. So it can't just be, you have to be super flexible. You know, you got to be super flexible in how you teach.
And I reckon it's quite challenging or courageous to show all the new way or the CLA in terms of, or at least on our experience, we meet people that we respect a lot rugby wise, or and as people, we think that even they know more about rugby than us. But I
Yeah.
think this method could help heaps their players to develop.
I agree. And I think and that's the thing. I feel like that's something that, you know, hasn't been easy for Alex and for other coaches that are kind of like adopting this approach. I hear a lot of stories now. You know, I had the opportunity with where I am in transforming and as a coach consultant to speak to coaches from around the world. And, you know, some of the things I always hear is, oh, but the parents don't like it. It's like, why aren't kids in a line doing the drills? It doesn't look like they're learning. It doesn't look like practice. So like there's always pushback from the parents. There's pushback from, you know, other coaches that don't know about the approach. Um, pushback from, you know, management and their bosses. So I always hear that, but I think you really have to, and this is something I really applaud Alex for doing, is like just stand up for your belief, because at the end of the day, you're doing it, and again, this is like where it goes back to like doing what's best for the team, right? So it's like doing what's best for the sport and for basketball, and I think for all sports, I think this is, it just is, it's a better way to learn. It's more efficient, and you maybe you can argue, like you could, coaches have arguments that like maybe, you know, kids need fundamentals before they can play. Like you can argue it. I think there's, you know, there's science out there, and I was just listening to a podcast from Rob Gray that it's like, you know, there's a lot of research out there that just they don't need, it's like you don't need these fundamentals in order to play. They can't just play, just simplify the task and make sure that they can find success in what they're doing. But then it's like, you know, you can't argue with the fact that it's more fun. And at young ages, you just want kids coming back, because if they can come back, then they're gonna get better. They're gonna play more. And if they play more, they're gonna get better naturally. So I think sometimes we have to maybe move away from like, all right, this is how I was taught, so we're gonna do it like this. Instead, it's like, all right, how can I make sure that these kids keep coming back, stay active, stay healthy, and then every year, more and more kids do the same, right?
We
Yeah.
say talent, passion creates talent.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
like because I reckon like the best players I ever coached. Some people say no, he was born like that. No, he's always with a ball on his hand
Yeah.
because he just loves it.
And then being open-minded as well, man. I feel like, a lot of the really successful uh coaches, I think, are open-minded, and they just find a way to, it worked for them. I think of like Steve Kerr and even Eric Spoelstra now, like, there's things that worked when they first got hired into their positions and things that have kind of they've gone away from, right? So it's like everyone shoots more threes. Yeah, like because you just get more points out of it because naturally more players shoot better from three than they do, from a contested shot at the rim. It's not that, it's just you can teach that skill better, I guess, because more players come into the league being better shooters than like better finishers at the rim. So it's just like we have more of these players that can shoot this way. So why would we not play like this? It just makes more sense, right? And then as coaches, you just have to grow with the times. You have to be open-minded and adapt.
Yeah, it's a challenge and it's 100%. You have to follow the evolution of the game.
Yes, yeah. And it'll keep changing. And I think that's something, it'll always keep changing. And I think like now we're seeing in the professional sports, especially in the NBA, like there's a lot, size is really big. Whereas, I think, 10 years ago or whatever the case was when the Warriors were running, it was all about their small ball lineup. But whereas now it's like, all right, you need the size. Everyone's got like 2 7-footers. So it's, it's constantly evolving. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. And that's what makes it so beautiful. Eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tito,
I maybe this is the question for final of the chat, but I don't want to forget it. But Alex said that you love to study, to read papers, and I would love to tell us a good podcast, a good book, something good to study, or where do we really need to study and get
Yeah.
better as coaches?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you don't necessarily have to study inside um like the sport that you're in, or even like things about CLA, for example. I think one thing I really like is like Tony Robbins. I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan, and he talks a lot about how you can wake up to better optimize your day. So that's something that's had a profound impact on me as a person and has helped me be a better at my job because I'm able to have more energy when I wake up. I'm able to be more focused during the day. I'm able to have, clear intentions that I want to for my, for what I want to accomplish that each day. So like, I think listening to Tony, I'd recommend him anytime. Like Tony Robbins, I think he's one of the best in terms of how you can maximize your output in life. He's got some really cool practical bits there. You can, there's loads of podcasts that have talked about the books that he's written. So I think, you can start from there. And I think, just learning about the CLA. So our basketball podcast is great. We have guests from other podcasts, or from other sports, I should say. We have researchers on there. So there's a big variety. So you can learn about the CLA and ecological dynamics and basketball coaching on there. Rob Gray's podcast is, excellent, perception action coupling. That's a great, he takes research papers and he goes through them. And then you got books, obviously Rob Gray's written a ton of books. Alex's book, Transforming Basketball, even if it's not even if you're not a basketball coach, I think that book is applicable. Like you said, Ignacio, you've read it and you really liked it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's really applicable to other sports.
Yes. Yeah.
At
Exactly.
least to rugby, it's a great book. It's a really great book.
No, and I think a lot of coaches from different sports have said that. And I agree completely because it's all about how we shouldn't be working in silos. And I think the book addresses that. So yeah, I think those, that'd be a good start.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was smiling because we're really aligned. I even studied with Tony Robbins, like my first Robbins dance, but also we speak a lot around the rituals, first thing on the morning, last
Yes.
thing at night, and the
I
passion
started
around like
doing-
being always studying stuff and listening to podcasts.
Yeah, I started doing the 10-minute thing that he mentioned recently. It was like, so it started like a couple months ago now, and it was like you breathe as soon as you wake up, you breathe, try and get as much oxygen into your body as possible. You do that for a minute, then three things you're grateful for, send blessings to three people, and then three intentions that you have for the day, and like really think about how you would feel if you got those things accomplished that day. And then you're just pumped to start the day because you want to get those things done, right? So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, we too. It's awesome. What else can we ask you and keep enjoying this conversation? Yeah, like who has been like who are the coaches you admire and why, for example, and which players do you admire and why?
I love, I'm a big fan of Alex. Obviously learned a lot from him working with him. So, he just really simplifies everything. And obviously, all the things that he's taught me is in our membership community. So the Transforming Basketball membership community. So it's all there for anybody else to learn as well. So that's first and foremost. I'm a huge fan of Thomas Isolo. He's the Memphis Grizzlies head coach now. He's had, tremendous success in Europe before moving over to the NBA. And, watch clinics, listening to him speak. He's just someone that knows a lot about the game, keeps it super simple, and someone that I've admired his kind of journey as well. But he wasn't always successful. So he's kind of had to, leave Finland and grow and go through trials and tribulations and learn and grow and fail and all of that. So, I really like him. I hope they do well this year and going forward. I just think he's excellent at what he does. I don't know, man. I think there's not too many, like I really like learning specific things like a Torre Messina, how he defends the pick and roll, for example. So like specific things from other coaches, but it wouldn't be like one other coach that maybe is like, all right, this guy, I'm trying to find everything that he's doing to learn about it. Other than, those two, I would say like Isolo and Alex himself, like I'm really trying to learn as much as I can. And then of course you kind of, I love to listen to like post games to just see how coaches talk, like Ime Udoka. I'm a huge fan of like how he analyzes the game after practice. I used to like JJ Redick when he was talking, when to analyze the games. I don't know how I feel about him now that he's a coach. I guess he's not as active. He's a different personality now for sure as a head coach. But yeah, man, and all the coaches that I kind of learned from, because even though I've been coached by more traditional coaches, they still, and I was speaking to one of my very first coaches just this week, and I was actually telling him about the CLA, and he was like, "Oh, I don't agree with it, this and that." And it's like, "Oh, all right, here's some things, like, do some research on it." And then I said to him, "But some of the stuff that you did with us when we were young was very transformational, right?" And that's something that something the CLA is about, motivating players, making them autonomous, adaptive. And he would always do that. He'd ask us questions versus telling us what to do. He would, keep us first. He would ask us about certain things and plays and games. And he would ask us what we would like to do at practice. Even though, a lot of it would be like it's either a spot shooting here or, a passing drill here, he would still ask us. So there was still a lot of those components there. Um, and just, a lot of the other coaches. I remember I used to have a coach and he was on the podcast, JP Nurbin, and he would drive me to and from practice twice a week, and it was like an hour drive. And he would do that twice a week, and then on game days as well. So sometimes 3 times a week. He did that for a whole season, and then those car rides, just like asking about his life, how he's doing, and those are like small things that I think in a young person's life that maybe is going through some things, you kind of really help them in ways that you don't quite know until maybe years down the line.
Yeah, the impact, it's on eternity. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. What's your thoughts on Joe Masula?
I like him. I like him. He's a crazy guy, man. I don't know. I think he's awesome. He kind of really went all in on it's something I wish I would have done actually, when I was last season. So it was still about like maybe we should try to find some layups. Maybe we should find some easier shots, attack the rim, try to get free throws. That was my mindset, right? Versus I think what he was like, let's get if we can get 3-point shots, whether it's 5 seconds into the shot clock, as long as it's a good look, let's try and get them straight away. So he kind of just went all in on kind of like, I think the 3-point shooting. And I quite like that. I really like that. In hindsight, I wish I would have done the same thing. Because I tried to like, all right, now we're gonna get a paint touch before we shoot a 3-point shot, or it's a turnover, something like that. Just because I felt that we were taking too many like early threes. But then in hindsight, it's like, let's just double down. Let's go. Like, let's go and let's be relentless on the offensive rebounds and let's really stick with it. So I do like his approach and how relentless he is. I love, everything that everyone has to say about him, his players, about how he cares for you. And it's more than basketball. And I think at the end of the day, it's just sports, right? Like it's not gonna make or break. There's a lot bigger things in life than what we do in between the lines that we play in. And I think having that perspective when you're working with athletes is important because especially when you're young, these kids, they love the game so much that sometimes they forget, like, you got your whole rest of your life. And sorry, but you made probably most likely you're not going to be professional. Not that you tell a kid that, but as a coach, that most likely they're not going to go to be a professional athlete, but they're all going to be working class citizens, right? They're going to contribute to society. And I think it's important that we give them the tools to help them, be the best that they can be. You especially working with young kids, but even 16, 18-year-olds, they don't necessarily have a lot of like communicate. They don't know how to communicate. So it's like being able to teach them how to speak with a leadership voice. Being able to hold them accountable to when they say they're going to do something and they don't do it. So these are all things that I think are super important in a person's life. And unfortunately, not everyone gets that in home or at school. So as coaches, another thing, what you asked earlier about, why it's like, it's so important to just give these kids the tools for them to succeed beyond basketball.
So good. The good thing is we're gonna clip and show this to our people because that's the right message for sports. And even if you're Michael Jordan, one day you stop playing and life continues. So
Yeah, and he's so good at business now. Like imagine if like I don't know, like if it was just basketball, like if it was just basketball, like but he's so good at so many other things and he's got a lot of respect from his peers and everything. So but yeah,
yeah,
agree.
because probably that character that built through sports, you can take it anywhere.
Yes, yeah, and it's like, being on time, right? That's something that never goes out of fashion. You show up to work on time, you show up to practice on time. you know, teamwork, right? Playing, you know, like that. So there's so many things just from showing up to practice you're going to learn, even if the coach doesn't necessarily teach you, but just sports itself is going to teach you.
We know time is valuable, so we're around 1 hour. Thank you so much for having this mate with us. It has been a pleasure. Really, we believe in energy, and we love what you're bringing to sports. So thank you so much, George. And transforming basketball, well, of course, promote it on a rugby marai.
Lovely. And thank you so much for having me, guys. It's been really fun talking to you while you enjoy the matai? Matai?
Mate.
Mate. Yes, I'm looking forward to that when I visit.
That's the crazy thing about sport. You got different people in different parts of the world keen to learn and connect. So we are really grateful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Short.
All the
It's
best.
been a pleasure.